Arch Manning was the star of Texas's spring game. And it's great for 2025. That's what I think anyway. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. His name generates all the buzz. I think the epitome of Arch Manning, Chris, is when Quinn Ewers was there. There's that picture of him sitting at the podium for the ahead of the Sugar Bowl last year against Washington, and nobody's around, and everyone's flocked around Arch Manning, who of course wasn't going to go play in the game. Is that all this is with Arch Manning delivering a good performance in the spring game?
So first thing, I was in that scrum. I interviewed with the Texas guys, but I was in that group around Arch over on the sideline. And no, look, he's the real deal. I mean, he was a highly touted recruit. I did have some people tell me, he played at Newman, which is a weird school in New Orleans to really get a good read on, because yes, all the Mannings played there, and even Odell Beckham played there in high school, but it's inferior competition they're going up against. Like, they're better than everybody on the field typically. And so I had some people tell me that they had some questions about Arch coming out. They're like, look, he looks great against all these little kids, but like, we don't really know until he gets to the next level what he's going to look like. But look, last year, late in the year, the Texas Tech game, he gets in late. The fans are going absolutely psychotic, just screaming and yelling, and Arch Mania is on. But I think him and the Mannings have done a good job of saying from the get-go, we're okay with Arch redshirting his first year. We're okay with Arch sitting and learning and waiting his turn. And they've done that. There's been no talk of him hitting the transfer portal or anything like that. So I'll say he's done everything right to this point. The only thing I'm a little upset with was Sark. I thought Sark, even with Quinn Ewers coming back, that he should have just said this was an open competition and say, look, Quinn's got to go earn it. We get it. He's the veteran and he's been the starter the last 2 years, but also Quinn Ewers has gotten hurt each of the last 2 years. He's missed 5 games. They've had to play the backup quarterback in some big games. And so, and to be honest with you, on the biggest stages last year in the game against Oklahoma, he, crapped on himself. He threw 2 picks early on, and they were lucky enough to take the lead late, but then Oklahoma goes down and they win it. That happened. And then in the Sugar Bowl, I was there and watched Quinn Ewers stunk up the joint, completed like 55% of his passes. And yeah, he tried to rally him late in the final minute, but dude, the damage was done. Like, Washington's defense just made you look silly. I think he had just 1 touchdown in the game. So I'm not saying this to hate on Quinn Ewers. I think he can come back and be very good. Now, he is replacing his entire receiving core, basically. All his big contributors from last year, and A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. And, reports have been good. Isaiah Bond from Alabama's looked very good. Matthew Golden from Houston. Silas Bolden from Oregon State. And then you had Jonte Cook, who played in the spring game this past week. He looks really good. He was a freshman a year ago. Ryan Wingo, the 5-star freshman, looks incredible. So he's got weapons, but I just don't know why Sark was so quick to go, no, it's Quinn. Everybody else is fighting for number 2. And then Arch goes out there and looks incredible in the spring game, had poise in the pocket, looked calm, looked confident, all this stuff. And, again, it's like, oh, yeah, well, I know Quinn played limited. I know he threw a pick 6 on the first play, but Quinn's still the starter, and Arch is the backup. I'm just warning you now, if Quinn Ewers gets hurt at any point this season and Arch comes in and he starts tearing it up and he's the real deal, Quinn Ewers is going to get Wally pipped, because I don't know how you pull Arch out if he's tearing it up. Again, we'll see, but the Arch hype so far, he's lived up to the hype.
Well, I think that Steve Sarkisian's thinking along those lines is, I don't want to deal with Arch Mania. I don't want to go, and feed that potential, that thought, that idea of, wait, could it be Arch Manning? Could we have another Manning? Like, that's football royalty. That is American football royalty right there. That is the crown prince, heir to the throne of what has already been well established by 2 generations and 3 different Mannings at the quarterback position. So I think he wants to, kind of tamp things down and just keep it, straightforward, so he doesn't have to deal with all that sort of stuff. And look, Quinn Ewers is top 5 in Heisman. I think he's actually tied for first in the preseason Heisman odds for a reason. I'm really high on Quinn Ewers. I think he's really good. And no, he didn't have his best game in the Sugar Bowl against Washington last year, but going into his 3rd year with the Longhorns as a starter, I think he has got all the potential in the world to lead Texas as far as they want to go. But certainly, Chris, he's not going to be able to do that alone. He needs a team around him, and Texas has had not a high volume, but a high quality of additions in the transfer portal. And they added another one recently, Bill Norton from Arizona, who comes over to play on the interior of that defensive line. They lost a couple NFL players in there. And I think getting Norton is a really, really good move up front.
Yeah, Norton's a guy who was a reserve at Georgia for the first few years of his career and then went over to Arizona last year. He's a big space eater, over 300 pounds, can play the middle of that D-line. The guy they're really excited about is the kid that got it over from UTSA earlier this offseason, Trey Moore, a kid who had like 14 sacks last year at UT San Antonio. So they're excited about him. I know Norton, they were concerned about filling up some size on that D-line. He certainly helps fill that role. So we'll see. Again, there's a lot of guys on that defense that they lose, and that's where I've kind of had my big, question mark with this team as they head, into this season in the SEC, where the schedule gets tougher. Is that everybody's picking them already as it's them in Georgia, and I'm like, can we wait and see what Texas looks like? Again, like we like Quinn Ewers, but that's a lot of new weapons, and there's a big C word you got to have. It's called chemistry. He had chemistry with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, so. They got to figure that out. But again, you lose all these pieces, Tavondre Sweat, all these big pieces on the defense. You got to replace them. Let's see who the guys behind them are. And then again, you step up the competition. I mean, this ain't playing Baylor and Kansas. This is Georgia. This is, big bad SEC teams you're going to have to play.
They got to go on the road and play Michigan this year.
Yeah, and Michigan, I know, loses a ton, but still going to the Big House is one of the toughest places to play. So, although Fox did do them a favor announcing this week, that's going to be an 11 a.m. Central game. So, maybe not as rocking as it would be a night game. Great job on that.
I don't think it's going to be quiet.
Certainly. But I'll just say this. My buddy, who is a diehard Texas fan, I said, where does Quinn Ewers rank for you on like the all-time, quarterback list, or at least since he's been a fan? And he said he ranks somewhere probably around Sam Ehlinger. And I was like, man, that's like, okay, he's fine. But he's like, he's not Colt McCoy, and that's certainly not Vince Young. And so when you kind of slot him, it's like, what kind of season is he going to have? Does he take that next step? Look, he could have a Colt McCoy-like season, get him to the championship and all that. But if he doesn't, there's going to be a lot of people looking back going, maybe we should have just started Arch. Now, especially if they get 2 losses early. Like if they get to the midpoint of the season and they're 4-2 or 5-2, certainly fans are going to be going, look, playoffs probably off the table here. And Quinn's been, every touchdown he throws an interception. Like, let's turn to Arch.
So one other thing in the transfer portal I noticed is someone is leaving Texas, and it wasn't necessarily an expected move. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, one of their defensive backs, Terrence Brooks, was a starter. I mean, played in the spring game this past weekend, but he entered the transfer portal on Monday, and a lot of people are wondering, like, what's that about? Well, Anwar Richardson, who covers the Longhorns for Orange Bloods, he put out there Wednesday morning and said, I was told Texas decided to part ways with Terrence Brooks. He said, it doesn't sound like there was any hostility with the decision, but he said the expectation from inside the building is one Longhorn player will enter the transfer portal by Wednesday or Thursday, and that's Terrence Brooks. So don't really know the whole story there, but something had to happen because, again, that was a guy that was expected to be a starter in the secondary.
That to me sounds like Texas feels really good about someone who is on the depth chart behind him. That's just the way it comes off for me. There are a lot of things that go into making a transfer portal decision one way or the other, but sir, I like what you brought up about Texas. Like, let's see what they are first. They've got the highest win total in all of college football with Ohio State, Georgia, and Oregon at 10.5. And, I think they are worthy of that sort of designation. Certainly, though, they do have questions. I think the perimeter and the chemistry questions you brought up are absolutely on the money there, and we'll see what they end up doing in the secondary. Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC, keeping us up to date as always. Thank you, Chris.
Anytime.
Do you want more portal chatter? You got it coming because names have gone into the portal that you need to know.